The topic is all about ECOCIDE law and the environmental destruction costs across Africa and the Caribbean. Across Africa, I think the number they had said was over $65 billion a year is linked to environmental destruction. In the Caribbean, it's even more, it's billions, because of things like coral reef destruction, coastal erosion, marine pollution, all those things. But how do we fight for reparations? How do we make sure there is justice? And our next speaker is an expert in ECOCIDE law as a new pathway, a legal framework that protects ecosystems and hold polluters to account. If you watched the news recently, Zach Polanski, who's the head of the Green Party, there's almost doubled membership, said that we should start naming hurricanes after politicians that open new oil fields. That is great marketing. Countries that aren't pulling their weight. Forget Melissa, Hurricane Trump. Marketing. So our next speaker is a respected environmental justice advocate, a leading voice in the global movement for recognition of ecocide as an international crime. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, please welcome Judy Foster. Round of applause.
Hi, everyone. I'm really sorry to make you sit through more. You must be so hungry. I know I am. So I promise I'll be quick. Okay, so it's lovely to meet you all today at this summit, and this summit is bringing together an amazing array of speakers. I've so enjoyed, like, every single speech this morning. Really, congratulations to the organisers and the speakers. And what we're doing here today is we're bringing together people who share one essential goal: to build economies that are strong, fair, and sustainable, and create the conditions for innovation and growth for everyone. So I'm Judy Foster. I'm the COO of Stop Ecocide International. We're a global organisation with one very particular focus. We are working to make mass destruction of nature, ecocide, a national, regional, and international crime. We work with diplomats, politicians, lawyers, civil society groups, business leaders, faith leaders, and many others towards this legal recognition. And today I'd like to explore how this proposed law, ECOCIDE law, can help strengthen both environmental and economic resilience across Africa and the Caribbean, and how it connects directly with the goals of this summit. So let's begin with what ECOCIDE law actually is. The term ecocide was originally coined as a term in the early 1970s to describe the horrific mass environmental damage that was caused by Agent Orange during the Vietnam War. And it means the most severe harms to the environment, those that destroy vital ecosystems, displace communities, and destabilize entire economies. More recently, in 2021, our sister organisation, the Stop Ecocide Foundation, convened a panel of renowned international lawyers to draft a potential definition of ecocide to be added as a fifth crime alongside genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and the crime of aggression at the International Criminal Court. And the definition the panel came up with states that ecocide is unlawful or wanton acts committed with knowledge that there was a substantial likelihood of severe and either widespread or long-term damage to the environment. So why does this matter, and how will ECOCIDE law change things? Currently, most environmental legislation is in the regulatory sphere, which means that the worst protagonists, those companies that cause the most horrific damage to the environment, pollute rivers, destroy forests, at the very worst, they pay a fine. And we all know that many of those companies are from the global north and cause damage in the global south. We know how it works. And then they move on to the next project after they might have paid a fine, but then they move on. This is not a real deterrent. It doesn't stop them making the decisions that they do. So we need law that is taken seriously. We need much stronger criminal law. We need to consider mass destruction of nature just as bad and wrong as we do mass destruction of people. because ultimately it amounts to the same thing anyway, eventually. So in simple terms, this new law will hold accountable those individuals who make decisions that cause those harms. But more importantly, we want to prevent the harm happening in the first place, so we want it to act as a deterrent and for boards to start changing decision-making processes at a board level. After all, no company director wants to be branded as an international criminal. No company wants an international criminal prosecution damaging its reputation and reducing its share value. Banks and investors will think twice about putting funds into a project that could be illegal and risk stranding their assets. With ECOCIDE law in place, the business community will have a strong incentive to invest its time, energy, funds and talent into developing new and more sustainable ways of achieving results. Criminalising ecocide would protect the Earth's vital ecosystems from the most severe harm, define clear moral and legal boundaries for how we treat the natural world, saying we can go this far and no further in the pursuit of profit. It will safeguard livelihoods, economies and communities that depend on healthy soils, forests and waters. And crucially, it will link environmental justice with long-term economic resilience. Because when we destroy the environment, we don't just lose trees, fish or coral, we lose stability, health and opportunity for the population. So at a conference such as this, it's important to see ECOCIDE law not only as an environmental safeguard, but also as an opportunity and investment in economic security. Unchecked environmental destruction creates enormous financial risk. It disrupts food systems, poisons rivers, drives migration and undermines investor confidence. And we know that ecological risk is becoming a huge commercial risk. At a macro level, development and central banks face challenges such as asset devaluation and non-performing loans, while economic disruption causes market volatility. At the corporate level, companies contributing to environmental degradation may see negative impacts on market valuations and capital costs. Insurance and reinsurance is becoming a huge problem, and insurance companies are really vulnerable as we move forward. And we know that the risk registers of many international companies now include environmental factors. Risks such as water security and biodiversity loss are being factored into their supply chains and their forward thinking. And they're becoming increasingly recognised as serious risks for which they need to develop mitigation strategies. So when ecocide becomes a crime, it does something profoundly stabilising. It sets a clear red line around the most destructive industrial practices, those that cause irreparable harm. And this legal clarity benefits everyone. Boards of directors will have more clarity on how far they can go when deciding on a particular project. Businesses that want to do the right thing are operating on a level playing field. Investors gain confidence that their capital supports ventures that are not only profitable, but also sustainable and future-proof. I think with all of this, it's really important to say that most businesses are not committing ecocide. We are just looking for the very worst perpetrators. And we're very pro-business and pro-development. We just want to stop the bad guys, basically. So what does this mean for Africa and the Caribbean? These regions, as we've discussed extensively, are among the most resource-rich and biodiverse on Earth. They also face the sharpest front lines of environmental vulnerability, from drought and desertification to coral bleaching and coastal flooding. Recognising ecocide as a crime could offer three transformative opportunities. First, it creates accountability that builds investor confidence. When potentially destructive projects risk being illegal, investment flows towards cleaner, safer, more resilient sectors, such as renewable energy, regenerative agriculture, sustainable tourism. And yes, I'm going to say, even mining and extraction projects, you can still do them, but you can do them in the right way, where you don't poison rivers and destroy forests, and you work with the community, not against it. Secondly, it empowers governments. Governments gain stronger leverage in negotiations with multinational corporations. By embedding environmental protection into national and international criminal law, states can insist on stronger standards from foreign corporations and ensure that local communities are not sacrificed for short-term profit. Third, it can foster regional leadership. Africa and the Caribbean can be at the forefront of a global shift, showing that protecting the planet and driving prosperity are not opposing goals, but mutually reinforcing ones. The Africa Union's Agenda 2063, the Africa we want, calls for a prosperous, inclusive and sustainable Africa. ECOCIDE law could provide one of the legal foundations to get there, both at a domestic level, through the African Court, and at an international level. The conversation on this topic is developing rapidly across Africa. The recent African Environment Ministers Conference, AMCEN, in Nairobi in July, agreed to establish a committee to discuss ECOCIDE across Africa over the next 2 years. The president of the DRC, President Chilombo, has spoken repeatedly about his government's support for ECOCIDE law at UNGA and at COP30 last week. The Republic of Congo and Burundi have also endorsed the call for ECOCIDE law. And last month, it was a key topic of conversation at the African Commission for People and Human Rights, the ACHPR, in Banjul. And in the Caribbean, where island nations face existential threats from rising seas and hurricanes, there is an opportunity for the Caribbean islands to join the Pacific island states who are leading the way. Indeed, Vanuatu, Fiji, and Samoa were the 3 states that proposed the formal ECOCIDE law amendment to the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court last year. To close, I want to bring this back to something simple and human. We all depend on healthy land, clean water, and a stable climate. They are not luxuries, they are the basis of life and of every economy and every company represented here. It seems there are moments when the collective consciousness of society becomes aware enough of a legal gap or need. That is possible to enact laws to address that gap, that it is possible to enact laws to address the gap. In turn, the laws adopted gradually transform the moral thinking of society. I believe we are living through such a moment right now, and that while ECOCIDE law cannot, of course, fix everything, it does constitute precisely the kind of legal and moral turning point that we need. We know that the coming decades are going to involve some very rough sailing. We need to be honest that we've already created too much damage to be able to avoid that completely. But if we are going to make it through to a world that is sustainable, or better still, one that is thriving in harmony with nature, then we must put in place the essential legal framework to protect life. That is what ECOCIDE law can do. Thank you. Wow, I was rushing there.
No, you got it. It's perfect, perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Judy. And the fact of the matter is, if they're able to achieve this, what it gives people an option for is actually having justice. That's what everyone wants, is justice. So best of luck, and we'd love to know how we can support. Please do connect with Judy at lunch.